Um, I think starting out, it's important to kind of just highlight the fear kind of culture that's happening right now.
Mm-hmm.
Um, I've only recently really started paying attention to like politics. Um, being incarcerated most of my life, it never really felt like I mattered as far as voting or opinion. So I never really picked a side, I guess, if that
Sure,
if that makes sense.
I get it.
But now that these things are happening, and we're not going to go into politics. I'm still not picking a side.
Mm-hmm.
I just want to address that this is a time to lean on those we love and that support us and that create safe spaces and collaboration and all the things because pursuing internal evolution also is about the internal evolution of our community.
Yeah, it's collectively.
The nucleus family, the small communities we live in. How are we going to support one another during trying times?
Mm-hmm.
Hey, welcome back to the channel. It's Pi Talk Podcast Production, introducing Pi Talk Season 2 with yours truly, your boy Coach B, and introducing No Chill Jill.
So pour out the tea and enjoy some pod. Pursue internal evolution. Make sure you like, comment, subscribe, and share with your friends.
And with that being said, we can also agree to disagree. And it's okay to have different opinions and outlooks, but it's all about how do we show up together and be in community together and be able to still love each other, even if we have a difference of view or opinion.
Yes, which is in alignment with, I think yesterday I made a post and it said, some change agents post to provoke action.
Mm-hmm.
I post to inspire change. Even when the goals are in alignment, it's just a different method. I stand on my value system, and my particular method is to inspire and encourage and uplift and create spaces for people to grow within their own powers and their own journeys.
Mm-hmm.
And so that's where I like draw the line. Like I will never like basically turn my back on somebody or disassociate myself with them because they expressed a not so favorable opinion according to social media,
Right.
right? So, with that being said, welcome back to Pi Talk, episode 2, right, of season 2. Well, technically, episode 29.
Right.
And I'm here with Jill. And actually, this episode, we're going to be talking about one of the competencies of peer support, which is natural support, something that just means, the people in our life that aren't paid to support us, that authentically
Mm-hmm.
care about us and support us on our journeys of internal evolution, and what that looks like, and how maybe we can identify some of those people in our lives. Um, First thing, as we always do, is I want to give some shout outs to people that are viewing, people that are commenting. There's a couple of comments on there regarding Jill and your easy listening and you're full of wisdom
Aw.
and your authenticity, and they really appreciate. I had a lot of comments about last episode, and you're being vulnerable on the air, essentially,
Yeah,
right? Being
that's what it's
vulnerable for
about.
the whole world and
Mm-hmm.
sharing in that journey. So anything you have to say about? I know I didn't share those comments with you, but
Yeah, well, it's taken me it's been a journey for me to get to this place of being able to be vulnerable in my communication. And I've learned that it's better to be vulnerable and authentic than to be living in a facade. And my goal is to educate, empower, and inspire every single person that I possibly can every single day. And I'm committed to continuing to be vulnerable. And I just encourage everyone else to find your voice and use it, because we want to hear. And I appreciate y'all very much for the compliments, for the comments, and I'm going to continue to show up, and I appreciate y'all very much.
So genuine. I'm excited for season 2.
Hey.
Well, before we move on, I'm going to ask Jill about her recent trip.
Ooh.
And first, keep effing going, right? Day
Yes.
29. Thank you, Joshua Smith, Jordan Davis, for producing such a wonderful collection of affirmations and inspirational quotes that we can pull from. And that partnership is ongoing and continuous, man. I love you guys. How about, would you like to do the honors?
Sure.
Day 29.
All right. Day 29. Don't be afraid to fail. Failure is just a natural part of the process of achieving greatness. Embrace your failures and use them as lessons to be learned and grow. Definitely. I like to say that we're failing forward.
Yeah, like falling up the stairs.
Yes, I do that all the time.
Yeah, I'm quite clumsy myself. I think the term my mom used to use when I was growing up was accident prone. Tripping, falling, dropping things, breaking things, Yeah, that's me. It happens. So, how about this trip? And in light of like the conversation that we hope to have on today's episode, how has your natural supports, the people that supported your journey, and how does that tie into who you go on these out of country trips with, and what's that look like?
Yeah, so I definitely enjoy traveling very much. And I like to say that I'm solar powered. So, especially during this time of year, I need to go to warm tropical places, which I did. And I went with some great friends of mine, and we're able to authentically communicate and show up for each other. And it's something that it's important to me to travel with people who are in my circle. And, traveling with the wrong people can really ruin a trip. So I'd rather, either travel alone or travel with people who like to do the same things, who were able to vibrate on the same frequency and talk about, business or not while we're traveling. And I'm really appreciative of the natural supports in my life. And, I like to keep my circle small. I have a lot of different, friends, but the people who I hold really near and dear are really valuable in my life, and I appreciate you all very much.
And just for sake of conversation, in your experience, what would be like an example of like the wrong people to, or characteristics that would be like red flags for somebody that is maybe supposed to be a natural support, but they aren't acting in that way?
Yeah, so definitely somebody who just kind of has a negative vibe, or kind of, is not able to go with the flow of things, because when traveling, sometimes, things don't go according to plan, and you have to be able to be flexible and understand that, some things are out of our control. Um, Other things are, if you have a significant other and you and your significant other are beefing all the time, like, I don't want to be around that. People who just like don't know how to control themselves if you are, under the influence. Like, that's not a good look at all. So those are things, that I definitely look for. Um, and the people that I travel, I've been friends with for quite some time now. And I travel alone sometimes and go to destinations where I have great friends,
Oh, that already lived there.
that already live there.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah. And it's always a point, I always make it a point to make new friends with local people in the destinations that I travel to, because it's always good to have local people who you can hang out with.
Yeah, I always found when I used to travel a little bit, like when I was doing music
Mm-hmm.
or things of that nature, it was always a different experience. For example, Vegas.
Mm-hmm.
I'd go to Vegas with, my brother from another, Brad Leon, and we were
Mm-hmm.
doing music and things like that. And it was always a different look because he lived there, and
Mm-hmm.
right. And so when we went there, it's like we were living at his house together. We would do the things. But then if like I've gone as like a tourist, it's a
Mm-hmm.
whole
Oh
different
yeah.
experience because I'm experiencing different POVs of the same city and the same place and like
Mm-hmm.
what's important, what matters as far as like where to hang out, where to go.
Yeah.
When you know someone that lives in a place, you get that it's not necessarily a tourist. You get that visitor's experience
Right.
versus that tourist experience.
Yeah.
And I think it's really, really important what you say about like having natural supports to travel with, identifying what natural supports really are in your life. And what that means is, and especially as a peer trainer, and when this concept comes up, it's like, we have supports in our life, like our barber is
Mm.
a formal support, like, right?
Right.
We're paying to get our haircut, but those are the times where we might be really just letting off some steam, having
Mm-hmm.
some conversation. Sometimes your barber, hairdresser, nail person might know more about you than some of your closest
For
friends,
real.
right? Because you
Yeah.
really have that experience. And so when we talk about like natural supports in regards to our pursuing of internal evolution, one of the hardest things to do is grow when people around you aren't,
Yes.
or they're not ready yet. And
Mm-hmm.
so it's hard for them to support you changing
Mm-hmm.
because your change represents a change that they weren't ready for in
Yep.
their life. And
Mm-hmm.
so being able to view things through the platinum rule, which is, treating people the way they want to be treated, even in your own evolution, it's a real balancing. It takes a lot of skills to be able to see like how my decision to become better and change
Mm-hmm.
actually is affecting people that are comfortable with the way that I am
Yeah.
currently, right? So
Yep.
so having those people that you can identify that will pivot with you, even if they themselves aren't on the journey you are,
Mm-hmm.
but respecting the journey you're on and supporting it.
Totally. Sometimes when we are going through that type of change, people who aren't ready, they will kind of have a different vibe towards you.
Hmm.
And sometimes when we are elevating to a higher frequency, the people who are not for us will naturally fall off.
Yes,
And that
yes.
is okay. And it's all part of the process. And we have to be okay with that because we have to always put ourselves first and understand that as we elevate, people are just going to fall because they just can't accept our vibration and our light because that just is not in their wheelhouse to go through yet. And
Yes, yes.
yeah.
No, certainly. And it was making me think about an analogy I've used before in this, describing this process. It's similar to if, we have these relationships with things, like
Mm-hmm.
we get attached to our wardrobe. Let's just use this as the example,
Okay.
right? And your wardrobe is a part of you and can be in some cases, depending on how people perceive it. But just for the sake of this conversation, and I guess this lesson, if you will,
Mm-hmm.
is that if I was 300 pounds and I had a wardrobe that fit that 300-pound version of myself, and I
Mm-hmm.
decided to focus on getting in shape.
Mm-hmm.
And I tell myself, I'm unhealthy. I want to do these things and I'm going to do these things. Now, the relationship I have with that wardrobe is just going to be one of natural distancing. Because if I drop to 200 pounds in
Mm-hmm.
the progression of my journey, I will no longer fit that wardrobe.
Yep.
At the same time, it's not a fuck that wardrobe because now I fit in these 200-pound person
Mm-hmm.
clothes, right?
Mm-hmm.
And so thinking about that, how many of you have ever been like, fuck those clothes, right?
Mm.
You don't have a personal anti attitude towards the wardrobe. What happens is you naturally grow and you become into a space where you're fitting into, like, your wardrobe has to change
Yeah.
to fit your new version of yourself.
Yeah.
It has to. Otherwise, you're going to be wearing clothes that are super baggy and loose and don't fit and don't feel good.
Mm-hmm.
So I use that analogy in the same way that sometimes friends don't become enemies, and you don't have to have that better me, little you vibe because you've changed your life and step into this great new version of yourself and you feel really good about yourself. No, what happens is as you grow, you lose the weight of people that just no longer fit with the
Yes.
new alignment of your value system.
Mm-hmm.
So when you're pursuing internal evolution, it's really important to learn to identify the people that will can just be tailored, right?
Yeah.
So it's like you really have some really great outfits in that 300-pound wardrobe, and if you can't find them in the size of that
Mm-hmm.
200-pound version of yourself,
Yeah.
then maybe they can be tailored. And that's kind of like the analogy of the people that are able to pivot and shift and be like, okay, well, now my friend doesn't drink or party anymore, and
Mm-hmm.
they're waking up earlier and going to sleep
Yep.
earlier, right? They can just pivot to accept you as you are in any
Right.
given moment. Those are the natural supports that you really want to lean into, right? Those are the people that are going to more likely lean in with curiosity when you shared with them this big change you're planning on making. They might say, "Oh, tell me more about that. What's that look like?" And be genuinely interested in
Mm-hmm.
in that process. And even if they're like, "Yeah, I'm not going to the gym," but
Mm-hmm.
they're not going to hold it against you for
Right.
doing it. And so that's what I talk about. And I wanted to share and kind of separate the difference of like what a genuine, authentic, natural support in your life looks like when you decide to go on that journey of healing, that internal journey where you're finding yourself and you might answer less text messages. You might be on social media less because the focus takes you away naturally from those things as you
Mm-hmm.
transition into a different version of yourself that you're okay with, that you're more comfortable with. And that's kind of really what this conversation is about. How are you showing up for yourself? And how are the people in your life responding to that shift?
Right. I think that's a great analogy. And I think it's okay to evaluate, reevaluate, and always reevaluate where we are and where we're going, and know that part of the evolution of ourself is going to change. And when you have these goals and inspirations to be this way, well, guess what? Sometimes something changes and we're like, okay, let me reevaluate where I'm at and where I want to go,
Mm,
and morph myself into the place where I want to go now, you know?
yes, yes, that makes sense. That
And
makes
not being
sense.
so rigid to, I have to be this way, and understanding that you got to be flexible and fair to yourself too,
Yeah.
and give yourself grace.
Oh, that's so funny. You chose those words.
Uh-huh.
So another part of obviously, I'm a certified anger management specialist, and I do one-on-ones and I do groups, and I really kind of embodied the philosophy of like emotional regulation and what that looks like.
Mm-hmm.
One of the topics of
Mm.
today's episode is actually kind of what I call selective grace, right? And the picture that I'll paint is simple, right? Say you're on the road and you're one of those people who might experience a little bit of road frustration, or
Oh.
if it evolves to rage, right? And say you've got this car in front of you and they're slow, or they're not sure where they're going, and you're in a rush and you're getting
Mm-hmm.
escalated, right? And finally you get over and you pull up on the side ready to, who knows, flip off this person, mouth something, And when you turn your head and look into that car, it's some little elder person, right? And usually what happens is instant grace is given, de-escalation happens, and you're no longer upset because now you've shifted instantaneously into an empath, right? However, what happens when you do look over and that person is a teen smoking a cigarette, talking on their phone, right? That anger then exacerbates and it grows, right? Same instance, same exact objective occurrences happening, but the grace is selective.
Yeah.
Which causes you to either control your response to an emotional experience or let your lizard brain jump in the front seat, and then you start getting rageful or trying to speed up and maybe cut them off other things. And so the concept is really about, if we're able to have that instantaneous de-escalation when we see the elder person, then in my opinion, it's also possible to afford that same grace when it's not an elder person that you're willing to give that pass to. And then it stands to reason, why not?
Right.
Why not control yourself? Why not embody that same response that you would have for the elder person and protect your peace? Then go wild and have an experience where you are lacking emotional regulation because the youth triggered something totally different.
Right.
And the point is, in both instances, you're in control.
That's right.
You're deciding the level of grace that that person gets.
For sure. And with that being said, when we are in that type of rage place, it puts our nervous system in such dysregulation that our body is releasing cortisol, which you can start to feel. That's why you start to feel your blood boiling and your heart racing and your palms are sweaty. That's your body going into this really negative space, and it's releasing all the stress hormones of cortisol, and your regulation is just all over the place. So from like a wellness point of view, we want to keep our nervous system at the most regulated space. So do yourself a favor and give grace, and don't let yourself get to that space because it's really not worth it.
It's a perfect time to install that AC filter, I like to say, right? Whenever your body is going to increase in heat, turn on the AC. Authentic curiosity. Soon as you get curious with why you're feeling the way you're feeling, where it comes from, you start to decrease in temperature, and it allows an opportunity for you to jump back in the driver's seat of your response. And like Jill said, it's all about protecting our peace. Part of that is making sure that our nervous system is regulated, because the things we think trigger our amygdala, right? When we have these responses, it's because of the belief system that's already installed, right? So for whatever reason, when we see that youth, something in our internal belief system says this is justified to let the lizard brain take over and react however it's going to react because I have been wronged, slighted, whatever. But again, same exact occurrences, same exact thing happening with the car. But when you see the elder person, something in your brain tells you, oh, this person deserves grace. Now you're willing to put yourself in an empathetic state of being, and now your response becomes almost nothing, and you feel completely at ease, like nothing happened. And it's so interesting to me because people that believe they have an anger problem or lack emotional regulation are the same people that will experience this exact anomaly, right? You've literally regulated your emotions in selective grace giving situations. And I'm sure many of you watching can find a situation in your own life where you're like, wow, that was selective grace, where you would have responded differently if it was a 7-year-old doing the thing versus a 27-year-old. right? But by having grace for all situations and having grace for yourself,
Mm-hmm.
you actually are doing yourself a service,
Yes.
because you're not doing a disservice to anyone else when you get upset, because the first person affected by a negative response to an emotional experience is you.
Mm-hmm.
You're stepping outside of your character, of your logical brain, and you're letting your amygdala overwrite your prefrontal cortex, so that you're now in a space where you're not in control. And it doesn't feel good. And it usually leads to regret and then this shame, guilt cycle.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? And so I really think it's important to question our core beliefs, turn on the AC when things feel like they're heating up, because it's not just anger that causes our body's temperature to rise and us
Mm-hmm.
to have these big emotional experiences, these roller coasters, and understanding like where it comes from can really help with the regulating of your response, because the emotions themselves aren't what are essentially regulated. They're going to come, right? Your feelings are a part of you.
Sure.
It's how are you responding externally, and how are you showing up in whatever engagement you're in, so that you can still be peaceful and not have to do reparations later, for especially in regards to like people you love, or
Right.
people in the workplace. Like, how are you able to manage yourself? And think about that analogy.
Mm-hmm.
When you're in the workplace, you know that this could affect your ability to survive, to take care of yourself. So there's a lot of situations in a workplace where you're giving selective grace, because
That's
in
true.
those same scenarios or engagements happen outside of the workplace, your reaction is more harmful.
Mm-hmm.
So whatever tools you're using to regulate in spaces where there's an increased value on the outcome,
Mm-hmm.
affecting your livelihood,
Right.
grab from those tools, get strength based with yourself, and be like, well, if I'm able to do it in these situations, what tools am I using automatically when I'm in, because not getting mad and cursing out your boss is essentially survival mode.
Right.
It's a survival
Yeah.
tool, right? And sometimes it's going to happen unconsciously, automatically. Being able to dive in intentionally and pull from those tools, because it's still you using them.
Right.
But then you get home and you hear the same words in the same tone from your partner or your teenager, and they don't get the same grace your boss did, because you're not putting the same value on the outcome,
Right.
taking away something that is
Right.
very, very important to you. So maybe change the value of your relationship with your teenager or your
Yeah.
partner to supersede that value of keeping that job.
Right. Totally. And with the tool, going back into the toolbox, one of the most basic and effective ways is breathing deep. Like, for real.
Yes,
When we
absolutely.
can like take a deep breath and hold it for a few seconds and breathe out through through our mouth and like really like make a noise, it really like releases a lot of that tension.
Mm.
And it's a way to uh, keep your system in regulation.
What is that? Is it parasympathetic system, nervous system? Or?
Yeah, so that's when your nervous system is like in a good space. Um, there's different techniques of breathing. There's one where you can like block, a side of your nose. If you're driving, I wouldn't recommend to do that one. That's why I'm saying take a deep breath in through your nose, hold it for as long as you can, and then exhale through your mouth and make like a sigh, because that's like releasing the energy that you're holding in. And
What about, I heard four-square breathing, right? Where it's like you breathe in your nose 4 seconds, hold for 4 seconds, and then breathe out for four
Yep.
seconds and repeat.
Yes.
Right. So that, I think that's called like four-square breathing or something like that, where you can really engage your system with the slow breathing, intentional breathing, diaphragmic. So making sure when you're breathing in, your stomach is actually pushing out,
Right.
versus your chest pushing out.
Yes.
And that's how you know you're breathing the way you're supposed to. And some of us don't breathe. And I
Yes.
noticed that whenever I do these exercises, I can get lightheaded.
Yeah.
That's a clear indication that I'm not breathing correctly regularly. Just walking around not breathing correctly is changing the outcome of my entire central nervous system.
Yeah.
And so sometimes just sitting down, standing up, laying on your back, and intentionally breathing with counting, with making the exclamation like the actual audio, sigh, not just but really like
get it out. Yeah.
really creating that physical representation of like releasing, the negative energy, if you will.
Right. And talking to yourself, I do it all the time. And, it's like, it's whatever. I'll be in my car, sometimes not listening to any music or any audiobooks and just talking. And, thank goodness I have tinted windows. But yeah, for real, like,
well, these days, if someone looked over and seen you mouthing, they might just assume you're on a phone call.
That's true.
Car
On your Bluetooth
speakerphone.
and
Yeah,
exactly.
yeah. So you're safe.
Right.
It's all about
and at the end of the
perspective.
day, I don't care what anybody thinks anyways.
Exactly. Exactly.
Uh,
It's been great. So where'd you go?
So I went to Puerto Rico and I flew into the capital of San Jose, and we did a whole entire tour of the island.
Wow.
Yeah, it was super dope. Went to a lot of different beaches, stayed at different Airbnbs throughout the entire island. And Puerto Rico itself is a pretty small island, and you can drive the whole thing within a 24-hour period. But we ended up, staying at certain Airbnbs. Some days it would just be an overnight. Other days it would be for 2 nights or 3 nights. It was really awesome. And I enjoyed eating a lot of different foods that I never would have expected to try. But I wanted to have an open mind, and I enjoyed every minute of it.
Which leads to, the nutritional aspect of this show, right? I'm curious, what is one, let's say, superfood that is on the shelves and like a regular part of the culture there that's not here, that you remembered being like, oh, you know, that's interesting that's like something that's like, I don't know, maybe at the food, like something that's in your face a lot.
Oh man, that's not here.
But maybe not here, but not in your face
Oh,
as
okay.
much. Something that's not promoted or part of the cultural norm.
Okay, well, in Puerto Rico, they eat a lot of fried food.
Okay.
And a lot of meat and root vegetables, and there's hardly any green vegetables. So that was something different, because normally I eat a lot of fresh vegetables and my body was really, really craving it.
And when you mean greens, like green beans, spinach,
Yeah,
cabbage, that type of stuff.
zucchini, yeah, broccoli. They're in Puerto Rico. When you order a salad, for instance, it's iceberg lettuce, onions, and tomatoes. And that's about the extent of like the vegetables. So they eat a lot of plantains, which is delicious. I tried mofongo, which is made with green plantains and garlic and onions, all smashed and then molded into, this like mound. And then you eat it with rice and beans and meat. So yeah, it's a lot of, starchy type of vegetables, and a lot of fried stuff. But, everything in moderation.
Being there for a week, eating, like you said, with the open mind, did you were you able to like physically feel any difference in like energy levels or anything based on like sticking with that diet versus your American diet?
Well, I had a lot of energy. I just do better in a warmer climate, to be honest with you. What I did notice is the difference in my skin. So I unfortunately have eczema on my hand because of just gut health and whatever. So it's something that I am always in check. And when I was in Puerto Rico, I did not have any situation with my eczema on my hand. And literally the day after I came home, it like started flaring up. And I'm like, man, I am not even eating like anything, so much sugar or anything like that. And it really is because in the Washington climate is just my body just doesn't do well in this climate. So that was something, that I noticed.
Yeah, and it's good to be aware, and that's something I really wanted to highlight is when we're pursuing internal evolution, a big piece of that is just awareness, like being mindful of your body, listening to your body, what is it doing, and when is it doing something different? Trying to take notice of things like that. So yeah, thank you for sharing on that.
For sure.
Let's get with these
Let's
four
do it.
agreement cards. We always read these because I really am a practitioner of the Four Agreements by Don Miguel Ruiz. And so the first one that I have is be impeccable with your word. Regardless of what language you speak, your intent will manifest through the word. What you dream, what you feel, and what you really are will all be manifested through the word. Speak life, speak medicine. Stay away from the tea because that's poisonous.
Yes, it is. Okay, my first one is don't take anything personally. Transform your life. Amen. When you refuse to take things personal, you avoid many upsets in your life. Your feelings of anger, jealousy, and even your sadness will simply disappear if you don't take things personally.
Wow, I think that's the cure to the analogy we talked about earlier with selective grace. Because when you see the youth in the car, you take it personal.
Yeah.
And then you get angry because you feel attacked. But when it's the elder, you automatically transition to, oh, that couldn't possibly been about me because this person is elder, and now you're leaning in with empathy and grace. So yeah,
good cards.
Next for me is don't make assumptions. Let your life be transformed. When you stop making assumptions, your word becomes impeccable and your life is completely transformed. Magic just happens in your life. What you need comes to you easily because spirit moves freely through you.
Yes.
I'm going to just leave it at that. Don't make assumptions.
Yeah, totally. Always do your best. Do your best because you want to. You do your best when you are enjoying the action or doing it in a way that will not have negative repercussions for you. You do your best because you want to do it, not because you have to do it, not because you are trying to please the judge, and not because you are trying to please other people.
Yeah.
Yes.
Always do your best, and your
Always
best
do your
looks different
best.
every day, right? And that's one of the things I talk about with relationships. Again, as we kind of close out this episode, going back to like the natural supports in your life, right? I don't believe in 50-50 relationships.
Not at
I believe
all.
100 and 100.
Yep.
And collaborative effort. So if you bring the 100% of your best self and someone else brings the 100% of their best selves, even if those selves look completely different, that's my definition of a collaborative relationship, not 50-50. 50-50, in my opinion, implies that I'm looking for you for pieces of me and you're looking to me to validate pieces of you. And if we both don't do that for each other, there's conflict.
Totally.
because love might be unconditional, but relationships are contracts with agreements and conditions. And
Amen.
so making sure that you're honoring all of your agreements with yourself makes it a lot easier to honor the agreements that you share in a relationship with somebody else. And so natural supports
Hmm.
really can be supported when you're standing in your own authenticity. You're able to set boundaries for yourself. And it's our job to enforce boundaries, not the other person's to uphold them. And so
Yeah.
I'm going to leave y'all with that. Jill, any final thoughts, reflections?
My thing is we get to choose who we be with. And it's really important to have the understanding that we get to show up to do life together and never be codependent of another person.
Yeah, yeah, and that's a hard thing to break because, again, we've been wired to be codependent in our society.
Hmm.
So one thing I like to say is I don't match energy because that would make me a puppet.
Oh, right.
Right? I show up with my energy and I stand in it, and I hope that any engagement that I'm involved in leaves the other person feeling better than before the engagement. And that is how I treat people using the filter of the platinum rule.
Mm.
Treat people how they want to be treated because it's not about how somebody feels about me when we're engaged. It's about how they feel about themselves after the engagement.
Yeah.
And so make sure you like, subscribe, comment. Um, really appreciate it. And take care of yourselves. Be safe. Give grace
Mm.
to yourself and others, especially in these trying times.
Yes.